Now that you've got your equipment picked out, the next step is going to be actually setting up that equipment, which we'll discuss now. First, I'll be discussing how to set up drum mics, and I'm operating under the assumption that you're going to get just one drum mic, and then I'll talk about some options for 2 mic setups, which actually won't be very much different from a single mic setup. Throughout this process, same thing as everything else, you'll find there's a lot of experimentation to figure out what gets you the best result for the equipment that you've got. So as long as you are willing to experiment with what you've got and just sink a little bit of time into figuring out how your room interacts with the mic setup that you've got, your drums, and your style of playing, then you'll be in good shape throughout this process. Now, I'll be displaying some pictures of some potential setups that I've used in the past, as well as using some examples from my own recordings so that you can get an idea of what sort of sound you'll come up with and what mic placement to use depending on the situation that you are in. It should be noted here that I'm using a snowball microphone as a stand-in, as opposed to this mic, which I would usually use to record acoustic drums. The snowball mic makes a great budget vocal microphone, but wouldn't work very well for recording drums. Okay, so the first setup we've got here is a single mic out front of the bass drum. Now you can see the microphone is about 18 to maybe 24 inches in front of the bass drum. And selecting where your mic goes is actually the very first step of mixing your drum set. So the reason I like this setup is because it gives a great balance of cymbals to snare and kick and tom. So one thing to be noted here, although these condenser mics are not fully directional, the way that you have them set up will actually impact the sound. So what I mean by directional is they've got a field of sound. You can almost imagine a cone coming out from where the microphone is recording so that you can see what sound will actually be picked up. Condenser mics are great for recording room sound, which means that they can accept sound from a lot of different angles, but that doesn't mean that they have no directionality whatsoever. So you do want to make sure that the angle on this is set up in such a way that you get a good mix of bass drum to cymbals to snare drum. Gives you a lot more definition on the ghost notes that you'll be playing on the snare drum and a little bit more hi-hat definition as well. So if you're planning on recording something that gets that has a lot of activity, especially within the hi-hat and the snare drum and even the ride cymbal to some extent, this setup is definitely one worth trying. It doesn't really balance the bass drum as well. You'll definitely get a little bit more contact sound of the bass drum and less of the volume. So depending on whatever type of music, what style, what genre that you're trying to record, this would also be an awesome setup to consider trying. This next setup I haven't really had much luck with. You'll find that when I'm showing examples, I don't actually have any examples of this setup just because it really washes out the cymbals a lot and throws the bass drum out of balance with a lot of the rest of the drum set. So try this one out, see what kind of sounds you can come up with. But while I was experimenting with this, when I was really into single mic drum recording, I never really got as good of a result with this as I have with the other 2 that we've discussed so far. So that gives you 3 great starting places, well, 2 great starting places at least, and one idea if you can figure it out, for starting with a single mic condenser drum set. Now, if you do decide to spring a little bit and splurge on a 2 input interface, which is not that much more expensive. I would highly recommend you consider doing this. You can add a second mic and get a bass drum mic, and we'll kind of discuss some of the advantages there. But I want to take you through with the interface that I've got, this sort of trick that you can do to make your 2-input interface work a little bit better for you and get a little bit more sound and definition from the bass drum. Okay, sorry, I have to switch to camera audio. Okay, so with the Focusrite 2i2, I cannot possibly say enough good things about this this little package here. So this comes with the your interface here, of course. It comes with a microphone, cables, and some other stuff like some crappy headphones that you'll never use. But the main bulk of what you want are these two things right here. But what you can actually do, if we come back over to the drum set here, I'm using this this boom stand, this cymbal stand as a stand-in because I don't actually have the equipment right now to show it. But this is the general idea. So what you'll gain access to is this second input here, and assuming you've recorded single drums for a little while and you feel like, okay, I think I'm ready to take this to the next level, what you can do is add a kick mic. Remember, this is the snowball microphone. This is not what you would use as a kick mic, but add a real bona fide kick microphone that you buy on your own. You get the cables for it. And then you can use this overhead microphone here to get some of that definition up top, okay? So you kind of see where this is going, right? So we can balance the bass drum a little bit better, get some of that definition from the toms, the snare, and the cymbals. Maybe, you know, and while you're at it, maybe consider buying another microphone, maybe a dynamic microphone to experiment with the sound too. But you can also get by with the condenser mic that comes with the Scarlett 2i2 package here. So now we have a lot different of a sound, okay? So you run the cable here from your boom mic, your condenser mic, or your dynamic mic if you decide to expand out. Okay, run the cable, and oh no! You probably don't see what I see here, do you? Unless you've recorded before, then you know what's going on. Okay, we don't have a second XLR input. Okay, so this is the microphone input, right? That looks like this. Okay, that's usually what we run from mic cables. Uh-oh, we don't have a second one of those. But with the huge investment of around $3, you can pick up an XLR to 1/4-inch input. Plug that bad boy right on in, and now you've got 2 inputs. Run your bass drum mic into one, run your overhead mic, either your condenser or dynamic mic, into the other, and now you've filled out the sound dramatically. So that's another option to consider. And while we're finishing up talking about setting up your mics, you'll kind of have to use your imagination here. Again, I can't play the drum set in my duplex, but I can kind of get you the right idea here. So let's first say you're just going with a single mic, maybe out in front of the drum set. So this is I'm going to pretend this is my single mic in front of the drum set. And what you'll want to do here, you can see on the interface, this red cable here is running into the interface here. We actually don't need this one for now. But what you'll want to do is start playing on your drum set with the interface set up next to you, and you can spin this knob here. You can see it's turning to the right. This is your input gain. So you want to get your input gain to where it's right on the edge of turning this orangish red color. And that will get you the best signal to noise ratio. And what's nice about this is it has these little halos around it. I'm going to start spinning it up here. Now it's picking up my voice. Picking up my voice, it's starting to turn green. That means that we're getting a good signal to noise ratio for my voice, but let's pretend that it's an actual drum set, which would be quite a bit louder. So I'm gonna get a little bit closer and pretend to be a bass drum here. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. So that might be a good place to leave the input gain here. Now on the screen, as we're setting this up, I'll show you kind of what we're working with here. So here on the screen is what this will look like. So again, you're gonna start in audio. And now this looks a little bit different than it would if we were recording with an electronic drum set. So again, you'll want to make sure recording is armed. And now if we select the I for input monitoring with your headphones in, you can start to hear the sounds that are coming in. I'm not going to press it now because I'll get a bunch of feedback. But you can hear the sound running from your headphones into your ears, picking up what the microphone is picking up from the drum set. Let's say that you want to do 2 microphones. This is not that different of a process. I've got my stand-in secondary mic here. Let's say this was the bass drum mic, and now this is an overhead mic, or wherever you want this microphone. So same thing, I'm going to look at this knob now. Since we've already got our level set for the left side one, I'm looking at input 2 here, and I'm going to pretend to be a bass, or maybe a snare drum this time. Pop, 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 pop. So maybe that would be a good place to leave the setup for the input gain for the snare drum. Now, you can notice you're not actually getting both sounds. We have a choice either between input 1 or input 2. We can't get both of them at the same time. So what you want to do is duplicate this, or you can select a new track. I'll just show you the keyboard shortcut for duplicating. It's Command D. You get a second track, and you'll just change the input to input 2. So we've got one on input 1 and one on input 2. I'm going to go back and forth between the 2 microphones here to show you. So this is fully speaking into the overhead mic, and now I'm moving over, oops, forgot to arm this one. And now I'm moving over here to the bass drum mic. You can see overhead mic, bass drum mic, and they're both responding differently, but they are both responding. When you're ready to record, assuming your click track is all set up and everything, boom, 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 pop, pop, pop. And you can see we've got a little bit of leak just because this is a condenser mic and this is a dynamic mic, and quite a bit of background noise here too, but that's not a big deal. And that's kind of what we're looking at here. Okay, now what about setting up electronic drums? Here you go. You're watching? Take the printer cable that came with the drum set, plug it in, and your electronic drums are set up. Okay, so I'm only joking here, except actually I'm not. So what's nice about these electronic drum sets working in GarageBand and Logic is they come pre-mapped to work exactly how you intend them to with the MIDI. So there's no messing around with MIDI devices, no mapping out the correct destinations for any of the MIDI hits or anything like that. I'm not sure what this process looks like in other audio workstations, but I'm sure the setup for that wouldn't be too terribly difficult, and you can always find a quick tutorial for that anywhere on YouTube. Okay, so now that we've covered some different recording techniques, it's time that I make my big disclaimer here. So these are good for recording Instagram drum covers, right? That's mainly my bread and butter. These do not make great recording options for recording the drum set as a voice, like if you want to make a professional sounding album, right? So what we're doing here, and we'll discuss this a little bit more when we move on to the processing and the production aspect. I'll speak on this more. We are not trying to make a totally professional drum sound. We're trying to bump up the sound quality that we get making these drum covers, right? So I have to make that disclaimer. And that's not to say that you can't get a good drum sound with 2 microphones, right? Because a lot of great albums have been recorded with 1 or 2 microphones on the drums, but you're not going to get this full, all-encompassing, up in your ear, you're standing right next to the drummer sound that you would with a fully decked out, 8 microphone pack that you would expect in a recording studio. So I did have to make that disclaimer. So, as you'll see when we move on here into the recording and the processing aspect of this process, we're actually trying to trick the listener a little bit using the visuals that we provide and the sound. And that's most evident in how we equalize and balance the sounds when we go to actually upload this video. Okay, we're almost ready to start recording our drum cover. There are just a few quick tips regarding the camera that I want to discuss before we get there. So on the subject of setting up your camera, there's one very important piece of advice that I can give, which is to show your face. Your audience wants to see your drummer face in action. So to facilitate that, thankfully I've been able to set up my drum set in front of this nice big bay window where I can put a music stand and prop my camera up from there. Using music stands to record video is a really awesome thing. This music stand that I've got was like $10 or $15. You can find them cheaper anywhere. I'm pretty sure you could even do this from a wire music stand if you're creative enough. But all I really do is just set up the camera, which begins the most harrowing part of this process, which is standing on the swivel chair so I can get up into the bay window in my socks where it's nice and slippy, and try not to wake up my cat, who always sits here while I record. It's such a blessing. And one little trick you can do is to actually tap on your camera zoom, and it goes from 1x to 0.5 times zoom, which really increases the field of view. You can see here, I've demonstrated with my friend Tabor on screen. And this really helps if you're up close in a place where, you can't really get the best zoom, and you can really do this on any iPhone that has more than one camera lens. I'm not sure about single lens cameras. That may be some like a software feature they've put in to be able to do that, but I'm not entirely sure. But definitely if you've got a camera with 2 lenses, you can do this for sure. All right, now I'll be showing this from 4 different angles just so you can get kind of a taste of what this looks like. And don't worry, I'll be going back to show what recording actually looks like. But you can see in this first one here, it will become obvious once you can't see my face how much more personal these become when you can see the face. So now we're moving on to the next angle here. This would be kind of what it looks like if I hadn't pressed the 0.5x zoom. All you can see are my hands and the drums, and this immediately loses a big part of that personal factor. It's not very fun to look at, and there's really just nothing for the audience to connect to. Now we're going to kind of an over-the-shoulder view. This is a little bit better. It looks a little bit more artistic. If you needed any more of a clue how quiet these are, I can record with my cat sleeping there, and he doesn't even move. This, I would say, is a little bit better. Still not quite the best. I definitely prefer the out front view, or something kind of like this next shot here. So this, you can still kind of see my face, but it's a little bit more of a nice angle. Maybe if you can find a way to record with 2 different cameras, this might be a nice secondary angle to include. But as far as a primary angle, it's not the most flattering. Again, you can't really see the face, but it's a nice sort of artistic touch that you can add.